Hello.
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 And welcome to the Velvet Movie Lounge, which
It's
is...
so soft in here.
Yeah, it's soft. It's like a 70s... Ooh, there's a lava lamp. Ooh, there's some funk playing. Mark's lying on a rotating bed.
I don't know why it won't stop spinning.
We can't get it to... The thing's jammed. We can't get it to stop.
Just
Hopefully
I'm
it
just
won't
stuck here now.
affect the audio too much, but Mark will be spinning throughout this episode. He was going to try and seduce you with a rose between his teeth and a slice of cheese on an ornate plate, but the cheese has gone everywhere, so it's a real problem.
It's all in my bush.
It's all in my bush. I don't know why we started as if this is like a sexy Valentine's Day special, because it isn't.
No, Valentine's Day was quite a while ago now.
Yeah, but you know, we've just done an episode on Wallace and Gromit celebrating the news last year that they're making a new Wallace and Gromit movie, and we did the Ghostbusters Afterlife episode in January, a good month after they released Afterlife. So
I think probably 2 months. When did Afterlife come out again?
Who knows? Who could ever?
Who knows? Nobody saw it. So.
No one could ever know that fact. So, you know, we could say this is the Valentine's Day special, because there's certainly no other theme.
No,
there's no other reason that this episode would be released. I mean, April the 20th is a day of no particular note. I've checked the calendar. It's just a random day. I mean, it is technically the anniversary date of the release of one of these films. But again, I'm sure that was just a random coincidence. You know?
Yeah, there's just no reason whatsoever why we're releasing this episode. We just like this day. We just really, really like this day. Actually, that is a reason.
Normally we release on a Friday, but we thought, why do we save it all for the Friday? There's a Wednesday coming up. Let's do it on Wednesday.
So for no reason at all, you've got a slightly unusual bonus episode of Kino Inferno, in that it's not exactly a bonus episode, because it's one of our regular episodes.
Yeah, it's just a normal episode of Kino Inferno, but it's not part of Season 1 or Season 2. We simply cannot release Season 2. It's too much.
It's in the vaults.
The government will stop us if we try.
There is an injunction.
We're actually just going to skip ahead to Season 3. So this is actually the pilot episode of Season 3. Because frankly, Season 2, we can't even number it Season 2 because it's.
I'm pretty sure it's considered a war crime in certain nations. Season 2, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much to handle.
Boris has been on the blower and he said no.
What a cunt.
So what can we do? Our hands are tied. Anyway, here's the first episode of Season 3, the theme of which is 2 films that have no correlation to April the 20th and no correlation to one another. Mark, what films did we pick this most unremarkable of days?
So I chose Idle Hands, which is, as the tagline so beautifully puts, the touching story of a young boy in his right hand. And what did you pick?
Very nice. I picked the film Smiley Face, which is a film about Anna Faris getting into a series of misadventures.
And they have nothing to do with this day.
Or each other.
Or each other.
Not a sausage.
Big fat blunt, though, maybe.
Ooh. If our employers are listening, of course. A blunt is code for a marijuana cigarette.
I know for a fact that one of my employers does listen to the show, so...
Oh, hello, Mark's boss. I sincerely hope my employers don't listen to this because of all the terrible things I've said.
I'm still loving the fact that my boss quoted this show to me at one point.
What was the quote?
He quoted the gay condition at me.
Oh, yeah, my mum likes to quote that one. Anyway, should we get into talking about these stoner comedies?
Yeah, I think we should.
Anton Tobias never had much on his mind.
Don't you think you should have like a goal?
My dream life would be to lie around all day in bed and watch TV while some hot broad delivers me food.
And he always had time on his hands.
4 bodies have been discovered and the killer is still at large.
Until one of them
What's happening to me?
got a mind of its own.
I have no control over my hands. It makes me do things I don't want it to do.
Aren't you a little old for Ding Dong Ditch?
Well, as previously stated, Idle Hands is the touching story of a young boy and his right hand, which focuses on a young stoner named Anton who literally just sits around all day and smokes pot and watches MTV and literally does nothing with his life. To the point where the devil possesses his right hand, and he, at night, whilst he's asleep, he goes out and murders people in a series of murders that have been happening across the country. All the while, a druidic priestess, I believe is what they say in the movie, is trying to hunt Anton down in order to stop the devil curse that's in its hand. All the while, Anton gets into a whole series of strange misadventures because his hand is going crazy and trying to kill those people around him, and does successfully kill some people around him. That's kind of an overview of the plot, I think, that I totally had written down and did not wing whatsoever.
Also, he kills his friends, but they turn into zombies. That's a key element.
They do. They really do. Yeah, his friends Mick and Panab.
Panab, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I've never understood why he's called Panab. It's a very weird one. I'm guessing it's a nickname or something.
So, yeah, this is your choice for no particular reason.
No particular reason.
So, tell me about your relationship with this classic of modern cinema.
I would go so far as to say that it is a classic of modern cinema, personally. No, I saw this movie when I was a kid. I saw it on Sky Movies because I was a privileged little white boy who had access to Sky Movies. So this movie came out in 1999, so I likely would have seen it maybe a year or so later, around sort of 2000, 2001-ish. So I'd have been about maybe 9 or 10. That shows how old I was when I saw this. So, yeah, I saw this movie.
Where were the parents at? That's what I want to know, listeners.
For legal reasons, I can't answer that question. But I saw this movie as a kid and really loved it, and it's just one of those movies that over time I've just sort of loved more and more because I just always find it really funny. I think it's got some really cool like horror moments in it. It's a very unique movie, I think, is what I would say. Even though it borrows from a lot of different places and a lot of different like horror tropes, I think this movie is it's kind of original in its own way, maybe. I don't know if you'd feel the same about that, but I think it's quite original.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, I think there's some elements that are very clearly borrowed from previous movies, which we can get into. I think it's a fun movie, definitely. Like, I hadn't seen this movie before. I heard about it. I think probably from you.
More than likely, yeah.
It was pretty good. All right, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious as to what you thought of this, because I remember you texting me last night when you were watching it, and you were like, "This is such a you film," which it is. Like, it's a late '90s horror comedy hybrid, and yeah, that's very much kind of my bread and butter. Especially because I literally just subjected you to all 5 Scream movies.
Yeah, so, and also you're a massive weed head, so
that I am a pothead, yes.
A pothead. Yeah, so anyway, the movie, I should say for the benefit of the listeners, I am not currently stoned. I am a bit drunk, but that's how it goes.
I like how that makes me sound like I'm stoned right now.
No, I just wanted, because I just laughed like really hard at
you Seth Rogen, didn't you?
Yeah.
Seth Rogen.
So, we're actually not getting into the spirit of it, really. We're just getting drunk. So, it is what it is. But listen. Alright, listen. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the cinematic classic Idle Hands.
Yeah, sorry, right. So, this movie came out in 1999?
Yes, that's correct.
Directed by no one in particular?
Yeah, Rodman Flender is the director's name, and I refuse to believe that's a real name.
Rodman Flender, yeah.
Rodman Flender, who I believe does have some relevance within the genre.
Oh. Is he also a weed head?
Given this movie, I would probably say yes. Here we go. So Rodman Flender was the director of Leprechaun 2.
Okay, sure.
So, definitely had his fingers in the comedy horror pies of the 90s, as it were.
Sure. He seems to have been involved in a movie called Eat Brains Love.
That sounds great.
So make of that what you will. Let's find out some more about Rodman Flender.
Well, whilst
His nephew. Whoa, Nelly. His nephew is Timothée Chalamet.
What?
That's what it says here, baby.
Timothy Chalamet's uncle directed Idle Hands. What the fuck?
Fucking hell, man.
Well,
Fucking
of
hell.
the two, I know who I think's had the better career.
I mean, we all do because you hate
It's Big Billy
Chalamet.
Flender, mate.
Big Billy. I mean, he's not made diddly squat.
He made Idle Hands, mate. That's all you need.
It should interest you that he's directed an episode of Dawson's Creek.
Why would that interest me?
Well, let me finish.
Kevin Williamson, yes, I know.
No, nothing to do with Kevin Williamson. He directed an episode called kind of to do with Kevin Williamson. He directed an episode called The Scare, which is a parody of Scream. So,
Oh, okay.
suck my nose.
I won't do that, but okay.
I really think you should. So anyway, Idle Hands, take us through the plot, Mark.
So Idle Hands opens with an older couple in bed,
Yes.
who I believe are Norma and Gary. I believe that's their names, even though they're not really said in the script.
Yeah, they're the parents of our main character.
Anton, who's played by Devon Sawyer? What? I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, he was
Sawyer?
Casper in the Casper movie.
He was also... he's been in quite a lot of things in the early sort of 90s. One of the things I always remember him from, he plays Stan in the Eminem
video for Stan, yeah.
Yeah. He was also in...
Sorry, go on.
It is like Dido herself is here. He was also in Final Destination as well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, he was the lead in that movie. And then he kind of disappeared for a while, but he's had a bit of a resurgence in recent years because he was in that John Travolta, Fred Durst movie, The Fanatic.
Oh, yeah, that absolute barnstormer of a film.
And most recently, he was in the Chucky TV series as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was very good. He played twins in that, actually, and he was very good in that.
Mark, you're right. He's had a real career turnaround.
He was in the Chucky TV series, okay? You don't get much higher than that, okay?
You certainly don't get much higher. Da-da-da-da-da.
Wow. Anyway.
Bum, bum, bum.
Rick James's Mary Jane just plays softly in the background of this entire show. No, so yeah, the parents of Anton are going to bed one night. They're the kind of family that go all out on Halloween. That's kind of a big part of this movie is it takes place around Halloween. And
Yes.
Not sure if you noticed this, but this movie is actually shot on the same street as the original Halloween.
I didn't notice that.
It's one of those things where if you watch the movie again and whenever they're outside, if you kind of look at the background, you'll see like the houses from Halloween are like right behind them.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah, it's one of those cool little tidbits. Anyway, Gary and Norma are in bed and they're about to go to sleep and they turn out the lights and Norma looks up at the ceiling and sees in UV paint the phrase, "I'm under the bed."
I'm under the bed.
Which is like a really sudden jump scare as well. Like it's just 3 pieces where it's just like boom, jump scare.
Yeah, because the rest of the scene prior to that is just them being like, our son's a stoner.
Yeah.
We hate him.
Well, the dad hates him. The mum is like, because she calls him Scooter. That's his little nickname.
Yeah, and the dad's like, he's never scooted his ass in his life or something like that.
Yeah, he's like, I think he says, he wouldn't get off the sofa if the house was on fire, which is probably true.
Relatable.
But then Gary and Norma hear a noise downstairs, and Gary goes to investigate. We then hear the sound of Gary clearly being attacked, so Norma goes downstairs to investigate, finds a big old puddle of blood, runs back upstairs, tries to get Anton's attention, but evidently he's probably too stoned to even realise that there's something happening. Norma runs back into the bedroom, tries to call the police, and then she's pulled under the bed and murdered by an unseen assailant.
That whole scene, it reminds me that there was an urban legend. It may have been featured in the film Urban Legend, where do you know this one where this old lady goes to bed or whatever, and she's always like, "Oh, is there a man under my bed?" And then she puts
the
her
dog.
Yeah, the dog licks her hand. And she's like,
yeah.
"Oh, that's fine. That's chill. The dog's there." But then in the morning she wakes up and on the ceiling it says, "People can lick too."
Yeah, I think it's also partially lifted from another one about a woman that comes home. So I think she's a college student who comes home and her roommate used to always tell her off for turning the light on. This was used in the movie Urban Legend. And one night she doesn't turn the light on and doesn't realise her flatmate's dead or is being murdered. And then in the morning wakes up and it says you should have turned on the light.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's another one.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Bro, that's
that was
so
a tangent.
Crazy. Bro, that's so crazy.
Anyone would think we were a little bit... What's a euphemism? Stoned. I'm just going to say stoned. Anyone would think we were stoned.
But we're not stoned. Don't say that, Mark, because then they will think we're actually stoned. But I can't stress enough that we're not.
Aiden, you sound really paranoid right now.
Fucking hell, man. They're going to get me, bro.
So after Gary and Norma are murdered, we meet Anton, who, one of my favourite gags of the movie, is asleep with a pair of headphones on playing like a sort of pop punk song. I probably got that wrong. I can't remember what the song is. But he's listening to a song.
I think he was listening to Moonlight Sonata.
Yes. I think he may have been. No. He wakes up and he sort of grimaces at the music that's playing in his head. His headphones, should I say, and pauses it, takes his headphones off, picks up another set of headphones attached to a Walkman and hits play, and the same song keeps playing. And he seems to kind of vibe with that. But yeah, the way it goes, Anton suddenly realizes that his parents aren't around anymore. He goes over to see his friends Mick and Panab, who then tell him that, have you not been watching the news? There's a serial killer in the town. We should
say these are played by Seth Green.
Yep.
And that one guy.
Eldon Henson, who most people know from Daredevil these days.
He played Foggy Nelson.
And it's also worth noting as well, you've got Jessica Alba and Vivica A. Fox in this movie. So, it's got a pretty good cast, in all honesty.
We certainly have got Jessica Alba, and you see her tight little buns before the movie is over. Don't worry about that.
You do, and we'll get into this later, actually, because that was a reshoot. That was actually a note from the test audiences.
What, they needed more ass?
They wanted to see Jessica Alba with less clothing on, yeah.
Understandable, but also, why are you so horny, test audience?
I mean, there's some horniness in this movie. Like, Vivica Fox's character is horny personified.
Oh, mate, this is a grotty little film.
Why do you think I like it so much?
It's full of horn doggery, I'll say that.
It really is.
The guy's trying to get laid at not a funeral, but a roadside grieving session at one point.
Which is great. I mean, one of the characters ends up without a head and is trying to score with somebody.
It's all happening. It's so horny.
I love this movie. We'll kind of breeze through the plot so we can talk about it in a more sort of general sense. So Anton becomes slowly aware that his parents are not around anymore. His best friends tell him that there's been a string of murders in his local town, and he then... Jesus Christ, I forgot where I was going with this then. Give me a second.
Mark is just taking a deeper swig from a can of Thatcher's.
I am, yeah.
I personally am drinking a Beavertown Heavy Gravity Hazy IPA currently.
Hazy IPA?
Oh, 420 Blizzard! Sorry, Seth Rogen just possessed me for a minute there.
It happens around this time of year.
Leave out a spliff for Seth Rogen, children.
So from there on, Anton eventually realizes that the killer has been residing within his house. In a great scene where he's watching MTV, who I'm just throwing this out there right now, that he's watching the music video to I Am a Pig by 2, which is an absolute banger of a song.
That's the other reason why this is a Mark film, because there's so much late 90s nu metal in it.
Oh yeah, the soundtrack to this movie is great. I think
Mr. Don't you worry about it. Mr. Robert Zombie is on the soundtrack.
Mr. Rob Zombie, the music video for Dragula is used in this movie. And I think this movie might be one of the reasons why I'm so into Rob Zombie, because this was one of the first movies where I heard his music alongside Bride of Chucky, actually, because that movie opens with Living Dead Girl.
So if you want to know why he is the way he is, the downfall started here.
Idle Hands and Bride of Chucky are responsible for this glorious mess that is delivering his sultry tones into your ear holes as you speak.
God bless this mess.
I am the mess, and bless me.
Pray to Seth Rogen.
So Anton realizes that the killer may be residing in his house due to a great scene where he's watching the music video for I'm a Pig, and he's making a sandwich, and he's so transfixed on the music video, which is basically just shot inside a BDSM club. He doesn't realize he's making a sandwich with a knife that's covered in blood, which is one of my favorite gags in the movie. Yeah. And then Mick and Panab come over, and they basically find the bodies of Anton's parents, which have been posed as Halloween decorations in the living room window. They find a pair of fried ears, which belong to the Feldstein twins, who were murdered at the local fast food restaurant.
Yes.
And they also find in Anton's dad's hand a piece of a shirt. And then Mick and Panab realise that the piece of the shirt is from Anton's shirt. And Anton also realises he has UV paint on his hand.
We should also say, before this point, though, we're introduced to the fact that Anton is obsessed with Jessica Alba and fancies her quite a bit.
That is true, yeah. She's the attractive young woman who lives across the street who's a bass player and writes her own songs.
Now, this is not a particularly unattractive cast, right? But I've got to say, Jessica Alba is a lot more attractive than most of the other people in the movie. With the possible exception of Vivica Fox.
Vivica Fox is pure sex in this movie. I'm just saying that right now. Like, she's just stunning in this film.
I'm just saying, I don't know how... We'll get into this, but Anton very easily gets into bed with Jessica Alba.
She likes a bit of rough, mate. That's what it is.
She likes a bit of fucking wronging, but we'll get into that.
I mean, yeah, because the scene where they first hook up is alarming for a few reasons.
It's baffling in so many ways. Because I want to say... When we get to that, we'll save it for when we get to that scene. Let's get there naturally.
Yeah. So, like Aidan rightly mentioned, so Anton is deeply invested in Jessica Alba's character, who is called Molly, I believe.
Someone like that.
Yeah, it's Molly. Yeah, he's deeply into her, and at the beginning there's a scene where she's driving past on her moped, and she drops a lyrics book, which he returns to her, but he's too chicken shit to actually talk to her.
Dear Slim, I write you, but you still ain't calling. It doesn't say that. It'd be fucked up if it did, though.
That's very true. So yeah, that happens, which then leads into the next part.
I'm a few pints deeper than Mark, listeners. I won't lie to you.
I think you might be. Jesus Christ.
We're trying to recapture the magic of the Christmas special, and I think we've just captured a tragic...
That was the dark magic. That was the ancient magic. That episode.
The ancient magic of the naked Santas.
The naked Santas, man. I'm still so horny from that. Oh. Much like this movie. I'm just very horny.
Back into this. What are we talking about? Idle Hands.
Yes, we are. So, right, I'll breeze through the plot so we can just, we can do our usual shtick.
Mark looks scared, listeners. He looks scared of what I'm going to say and what I'm going to do.
He's a live wire. I'm honestly really afraid.
I'm a problem drinker. By which I mean,
he is.
When I drink, I become a problem.
Oh, yeah, no, he really is. He's a liability sometimes, problem most of the other times. So after Mick and Panab discover that the killer is Anton's hand starts to act really weirdly, as if it's like, he can't control it. And so basically what happens is Anton ends up killing Mick and Panab he shoves a smashed beer bottle into Mick's head, which again is a really great little gag because every time Mick moves his head, you hear a little bit of beer rattling around in it, which I think is just a really nice little touch.
That was a nice touch.
And then he decapitates Panab with a saw blade. And then he buries both Mick and Panab in his backyard along with his parents. But not before his hand grabs hold of the family cat and throws it out of the window into the bushes outside Molly's house. And I love that part so much because it's just so fucking funny and ridiculous. And this is one thing I really want to say about this movie as well, is like all of the scenes where Devon Sawyer, I should have looked that up.
Stan.
So we'll call him Stan. Anton or Stan. Stanton.
Or Casper.
Casper.
Well, actually, you know what? We'll call him Stanley Casper.
Stanley Casper. So when Stanley Casper, any scene where he is doing the possessed hand stuff, like it's just a really great physical performance. I think like he's genuinely quite good in this movie.
But this is something. So I was talking about movies that I think this movie is kind of borrowing from. I definitely do think the whole possessed hand thing is very Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it even culminates in a kind of a take on the Evil Dead Ash cutting off his own hand scene, right? Like,
yeah.
Well, I say culminates. That's kind of like that's like the end of the second act in this, but
yeah.
Definitely, I feel like that's where Stanley Caspers is getting his like performance cues from, is Bruce Campbell's evil hand in Evil Dead 2 especially.
Yeah, I think he really kind of encompasses that manic Bruce Campbell energy throughout a lot of it.
He's certainly going for it. I don't know if he's quite at the Campbell level. But he's
No, but
certainly
who
going
is?
for it. No, true, yeah. He is America's
Yeah, I
finest
think like
actor.
because I've seen Stanley Casper in quite a few movies, and I think this is my favorite performance of his because it is just so like physical and so over exaggerated.
No, he does a very good job with the physical comedy, definitely. But yeah, I definitely got the sense that this movie was inspired by perhaps a herbally enhanced viewing of Evil Dead 2. Like, I feel like this is something that somebody would pitch, like, bro, what if we made a movie that was just about a guy with a possessed hand? And this is the result of that. I have no insight into how this movie was written. This is pure speculation on my part, but that's definitely what I thought. I was like, this is just somebody who saw Evil Dead 2 and was like, what if we took that one scene and made a whole movie of it?
Well, when we sort of get past the plot section, I'll sort of delve into a little thing that I read about recently with regards to like the writing and the making of this movie, which kind of I wasn't quite privy to prior. So which I thought was kind of interesting. So after Stanley Casper chucks his cat Bones into the bushes outside Molly's house, he ends up going over there to make sure that his cat's okay. And Molly is very keen to invite Stanley Casper into her house. Anton, should I
She's
say?
gagging for it, yeah.
And he's covered in blood. Like,
Yeah.
he's covered in his friend's blood.
And until this point, the only interaction really, it's not even an interaction. We've just seen him staring at her out the window, and it's made clear because his friends are like, "Why don't you talk to her, bro? You're obsessed with her." It's made clear that he just kind of observes her from afar.
Yeah, because I don't. On the one hand, I don't fully get their whole relationship, but at the same time, like, he just turns up at her house looking crazy, covered in blood, and she's so into it.
She's
She's
way
frothing.
too into it. Because we should say, they have a bit of a chat about her song lyrics, and then they start making out, and the hand is trying to kill her at various points, which barely phases her. And then he starts tying his hand to the bedpost, and she's just like, "Oh, you're kinky." And it's like,
And then they fuck,
Bro.
or at least it's implied they fuck.
bro,
Like, she's well into it.
fair enough. Fair enough, but like, not kink shaming, but fucking hell.
Molly likes a bit of rough. What can you say? And Anton, he provides that. Maybe she likes. Well, she even says, like, she even refers to him as a dirty boy covered in blood at one point. So clearly, that's her thing.
Well, we've all got a thing.
And hers is dirty bloody boys, and that's what she's into. God, that was a weird sentence. I don't think I enjoyed that.
No one did.
No, it's a very, very unsavoury thing that I just said.
People probably listen to this podcast while they're making love, and that you've probably just killed the mood for them now.
Oh well, let's get them. Let's get you back up there, guys.
Oh, that's made it go further inside myself.
Well, I'm hard as rock right now, so
If you do listen to this podcast while making love, first of all, what's wrong with you? And second of all,
yeah, like get help.
And second of all, we'd like to know, so do sound off in the comments.
Sound off, show us, link us to your OnlyFans.
Well,
whatever
don't feel the need to show us.
No, well, I'm not saying no to that.
Look, if you're fit, show us, but if you're not, and let's be honest, you know yourself. You know yourself.
That's true.
Mingers need not apply.
Well, so after Stanley Casper and Horny Molly bump uglies.
Horny Molly. Okay.
Horny Molly.
Okay, that's her character, I guess.
So after Horny Molly and Stanley Casper bump uglies, Anton / Stanley Casper go back to his house. Well, he goes back to his house, should I say, and that buries Mick Penab and his parents and does a little eulogy, which, again, I really enjoy, where he talks about Mick and Penab like, I'll never forget all those times we just sat around, watched TV, and just got really stoned, and all those other times where, well, I guess that's just all we ever did. I enjoy that. But then Mick and Penab rise from the dead.
Yes, they do.
They come back to office, which isn't fully explained.
Well, they say
Well,
that they saw a tunnel with a bright light at the end of it, but the music was cringe, and it was a long way to go, so they thought, fuck it. So I guess it's implied that they came back to life through laziness. They were too lazy to die.
Which I love, but like, so are zombies just commonplace in this universe as a result of this?
I think we're supposed to infer that this is a level of hitherto unknown laziness. I will say, this is where I think the movie is also taking cues from other movies, because the whole he's got 2 zombies in his house that he has to try and cover up somewhat is definitely, I think, inspired by the Peter Jackson classic Brain Dead.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's further exemplified by the sheer number of really disgusting gags they do involving Panob's severed head.
Yeah, definitely.
They milk that.
The bit as well where they reattach his head through means of a salad fork later on. And he eats the burrito and the sauce comes through the gash in his neck. That is like something straight out of Brain. I mean, it's tamer than anything in Brain Dead, but it's definitely in that ballpark.
Yeah, this movie does have some quite nasty gore and violence in it in places.
Yeah. And they do a lot of gags with is it Panob's severed head?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good gags with that. When Anton wakes up after the corpses, Mick and Panob's reanimated corpses knock him out, and he comes downstairs to see them sat watching TV, and then sees that they're zombies. And you've got Panob's severed head on the armchair, and Mick is throwing cheese balls into his mouth, which is...
Yeah.
That's the stuff in this movie that I really like. I think this movie has quite a unique energy to it. And yeah, it is borrowing from a lot of different places, but it's kind of doing it in its own way, I think.
Oh yeah, it wasn't obnoxious. I just kind of as someone who's a connoisseur of this genre, I definitely saw some of the inspiration points, I think.
Yeah, and I think the film makes no bones about that as well.
It
wears its influences on its sleeve quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So after the zombified Mick and Panob sort of, come back, Anton is there right, okay, I need to do something about this possessed hand of mine. So he goes to a friend of his. I don't know what this character Randy's relationship to Anton is. Randy
is Randy the metalhead, yeah.
The glam metalhead, because every time his car starts, it plays "Shout at the Devil."
Yeah, that's the only song he's ever listening to.
I like that as a gag. I really do.
Yeah, so they go to him for advice on the devil because he listens to satanic music. One thing one line I definitely enjoyed in this movie. It's not very PC, listeners, but where Anton asks Randy about, you're always listening to the satanic music, so we thought you'd know about the devil, and he just goes,
"It's just music, like Mozart and that other fag.
Let's keep it clean. Who, Beethoven?
Yeah, that's the guy. Look, it's just like their music, only louder."
I knew you would enjoy that line.
I enjoyed that.
It's so absurd. It's so absurd.
I mean, we should also say we're introduced to Randy as he's chirping someone at a roadside memorial to the 2 twins who were murdered, who were their schoolmates.
Yeah, the Feldstein twins, who earlier in the movie, when Anton is asked, did you hear about what happened to the Feldstein twins? He goes, what, were they caught jerking off in the milkshake maker again?
Yeah. And the girl that Randy is hitting on is there mourning them to some extent. But she also reveals that, because she says, I was so mean to them when they were around. They asked me for a double date and I thought they were tards because there's only one of me. Implying that they were going to spit roast her, I suppose. And she seems to be regretting the fact that she turned them down. So I want to know more about that character's perspective.
Yeah, that's a whole story. But Randy is... It clearly looks like she might be into it because he starts to, lead her away and she seems like she's into it. Until Anton shows up with his possessed hand down his trousers and sort of frightens her off.
And we should also say Randy then drives over the small memorial erected.
He does, and then drives straight into the drive-thru for the burger restaurant.
Yeah. But don't worry, listeners. Randy does get his end away with Vivica Fox later on.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably mention her character a bit more before we sort of delve into the finale.
Yeah, what in God's name is going on with this character? Because she's she's introduced as a nun, but then it turns out she's just in disguise as a nun.
Yeah, she's a druidic high priestess Her name is Debbie LaCure.
Yes.
And she is on a mission to stop the devil from, whenever it possesses somebody, her order of priestesses, they have to stop it. That's pretty much all you ever really find out.
Yeah, and she's very much playing a Vivica A. Fox type in this movie.
Yeah, she is. But I like her in this movie a lot. I think she's very funny.
Yeah, and she's immediately hits it off with Randy as well. Like, you talk about Randy, they are both immediately horny for each other.
They are, and in the end, they bump uglies.
They certainly do. Because once the evil is defeated, she's like, now for the ritualistic sex, and just kind of drags Randy, an appreciative Randy, away.
And those characters come full circle.
They certainly do. They certainly come.
They do.
Randy, as well, I want to point out, he's straight on it with Vivica A. Fox, because like they exchange a few flirtatious lines, and then she's like, okay, come on, we've got to go and find the devil, like, you can take me to him. So in any other movie, you'd be like, oh, she's just like using him to get to the devil. But no, the movie makes it clear she does want a good piping. It's just she's got to deal with this devil situation first. Also,
that's why they have the ritualistic sex.
Also, Randy is like, they've just met. It's so funny, and he's just like, "Hey, come on, kid!" It's so cute.
Yeah, it's the line, "Hey, kid, isn't that knife a little bit extreme?" That always gets me.
There's some weird pet names in this because fucking what's he called? Jasper Casper? What's this guy called?
Stanley Casper.
Oh, Stanley Casperson. He calls Jessica Alba something, but he calls it like a snake or something.
Baby snakes.
Baby snakes, yeah, that's right. That's a really weird line. It's like, okay, baby snakes.
I feel like, I guess it's not really explained, but I guess that's supposed to be like a reference to her lyrics, maybe?
Yes, I think so, maybe, but...
Yeah, I think you can kind of infer there's a reference to her lyrics. So
I'm just saying, these guys are quick off the bat with the pet names.
Oh, everybody in this movie just wants to fuck. Like, it's a horny movie.
It is a horny movie. But where were we in the plot?
So Anton, Stanley Casper, whatever you want to call him, he's there like,
Jasper Carrot.
Yes. He's like, he's got to do something about his hand. So Randy says to him the phrase, "Idle hands are the devil's playpen," which is obviously the inspiration for the title of the movie.
I like that they consistently get the quote wrong, because it's the idle hands are the devil's playthings.
Yes.
Randy says play pen, and then later on, Jasper Casper, or whatever he's called, says there is
playground.
It's playground.
Yeah, I like that as a little detail, though. I think it's it's better than just outright using the phrase, I think. So Anton / Stanley Casper takes this on to mean that he should keep his hands busy, so he takes up knitting. And it's one of my favourite visuals in the movie, where they're sat there listening to Rob Zombie, and Anton is knitting. Mick is just getting high. Well, Mick and Panob are getting high, whilst Panob's severed head is sat in his own lap, just smoking a spliff. And then these two like dweeby cops who appeared earlier in the movie to bust Anton and like gave him shit because back in high school he would never share his weed with them.
Yes.
They rock up and they look through the window and see Anton sat with these two corpses. And are like, shit, he's the killer. We should we should stop him. They burst into the house, and Anton's possessed hand murders the fuck out of both of them.
Yes, it certainly does.
In some very graphic ways. Because one of the guys gets a knitting needle through his ear and out the other end, and the other guy gets shot in the face with a taser.
He certainly does, to death.
Yeah. And all the while, Dragula just blares out in the background. It's wonderful. Absolutely.
So the long and short of that is Anton decides that the hand must go. They tried to cut it off with a bagel slicer, which does not go well. They eventually end up jamming the hand into Panob's severed head's mouth, and Anton goes at it with the meat cleaver. Cuts it off, and then it runs off like fucking cousin it in the... Not
you mean Thing?
Thing in the
who, as you can imagine, it's the same actor.
Oh, it is.
It's the same guy that did the hand movements for Thing in Addams Family who played the hand in this movie. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I find
who else would you get?
Yeah, true. I find it interesting that the hand immediately becomes a weird zombie devil hand.
Well, it does because it then attacks Anton after Mick and Panob go to get bandages and burritos. The most important part is they go get the burritos.
Yes.
The hand then attacks Anton, very much in the manner of the Evil Dead, and Anton throws it in the microwave. In what's a really fucking gross gag.
Kind of Gremlins-esque moment.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's when the hand starts like bubbling and then like blood literally shoots out the fingertips and stuff. Like, it's really quite gruesome. But that doesn't kill the hand. The hand eventually escapes when Mick and Panab let it out of the microwave because they want to make burritos.
As one does.
And I love how they don't bother cleaning the microwave before they cook the burritos either.
Why
They even have a
they?
discussion.
But,
Well, they're undead. They ain't gonna get anything. Like,
yeah, and so we should say Jasper Kasperson, he goes off with Jessica Alba to go to this punk gig, which is happening on Halloween, I suppose.
it's the school dance. Yeah.
Sure, but it's like a punk band playing the school dance.
It is not just a punk band, my friend. It is The Offspring.
Oh, is that The Offspring?
It's The Offspring.
Oh, I didn't recognise them because of all the Halloween get-up they're wearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's
cool.
The Offspring. Yeah, because they play a cover of "I Want to Be Sedated" and then they play their own song "Beheaded."
Oh, okay. I thought they were just covering The Offspring. Okay, that makes more sense.
No, that is The Offspring.
Fair enough. I've seen The Offspring live.
You didn't know it was them.
No, well, I guess I probably, if I was paying more attention, I would have. But,
Yeah, well, there we go. There's the root of the problem.
no, but they're wearing like Halloween makeup. I didn't realise it was them because the guy's
yeah,
the guy's normally wearing his trademark wraparound sunglasses. His old Noodle.
That's very true.
Wait, is Noodle's not the guy?
Tom DeLonge is also in this movie.
Noodle's not the guy. I don't think. Noodle's one of the guys, but I don't think he's the singer. Anyway, Tom DeLonge. What about him?
Yeah, from Blink-182. He is in this movie. He has a cameo.
He, side note, is massive into aliens. Did you know this?
Yeah, I'm aware of this.
Yeah. If the list,
Like Robbie Williams levels of into aliens.
yeah, I mean Robbie Williams is just like generally insane, but Tom DeLonge, yeah.
He really is.
Listen, we can't get into it. We haven't got time. But listeners, if you want to fall down a rabbit hole, type in Tom DeLonge aliens.
The reason why I mention that is because, yeah, he does actually have a small cameo in this movie. He's kind of hard to spot, though. But when Anton is in the burger jungle and he goes up to the fast food, the drive-through window, should I say, and he says to the guy, "Oh, it's break time." That's Tom DeLonge, who he says that to.
Oh, right, okay.
Who just goes, "Oh, break time, all right."
Oh, I
That's
didn't
him.
notice him. I did write down that the guy's like, all right, which I thought was
Yeah,
funny.
that's him.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, so Anton, Stanley Jasper, Carrotson, he goes
Jasper
to
Carrot.
these.
Yeah, Jasper Carrot's in this movie.
Goes to the school dance where the hand is already there because the hand has spelt out in blood that it's going to kill Molly because that's what the hand wants to do. It wants to take a soul to hell. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And so the hand kills the school principal in a scene where the principal is on the phone to a sex line
Yeah.
as the hand crawls up his trousers.
Yeah. I mean, we also get a scene where the metalhead guy, Randy's friends, are fucking in the car, and his hand tits up the topless woman.
It does tit up the topless woman before breaking her neck.
Yeah.
That does happen.
So, it's a classy movie.
It's very classy. But the reason I bring up the principal bit in particular is because it's one of my favourite parts of the movie where after it has killed the principal, you see this shot of the hand inserting its fingers into an electric pencil sharpener to sort of sharpen I think it's the bones of the hand, I guess, that it's doing it to.
Yeah.
And so it becomes like a clawed hand, which I was like, that's kind of cool and kind of inventive. I like that as a
I
thing.
want to flag up this car scene with the metalhead couple fucking, though. Because, right, this scene is crazy, right? I don't want to just be, like, talking about horny stuff all the time, but... Because they start off, like, making out,
Don't believe
and then
me.
it turns into, like, oh, this movie's maybe, like, a 15, because they're just, like, there's no titty for a bit, and they're just, like, nuzzling into the neck and shit. And then, whoa, titties are out. You're getting a
And
big
he's
shot.
chowing down on her.
Yeah, this
Like,
is what I was
he
going to
goes
say.
down on her.
Because it goes from like a PG-13 scene to suddenly being like, this guy is eating pus. And it's like, it's not ambiguous either. Obviously, you don't see, contact, but...
No, but he is like full on, like washing his face in that.
Yeah, and it's not sort of like that is what is occurring. And,
Because she even says, like, she's getting close. Like, she explicitly says that.
I mean, goddamn. I mean, fair enough. Like, fair enough to this guy. Like, listen, if there's any men listening who go with women, you've got her, all right? You've got her. This is a PSA, yeah? This is a PSA. If you expect it in return, you've got her. That's all I'm saying.
I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but, like, I mean, obviously, any kind of sexual practice, if you don't like it, that's fair enough. Like, if you genuinely don't enjoy it.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is, if you want fair trade, You've got to be trading fair.
I've never understood guys that won't do it. I just
Remember, my mother listens to this. Let's not go too far into
We chow down on puss on this pod.
Look, I'm not saying... I cannot confirm whether we do it or not. I'm just saying we encourage it.
We encourage men to please your women.
Yeah, for God's sake.
Just do it. It's the least you can do. Wash a fucking dish, chow down.
In the year of our Lord 2022, push a hoover around the place and, you know...
Anyway, so after the girl in the car gets her neck broken, after the dude's, going south...
Taking a journey.
Taking a journey down the old dusty trail.
Don't let it get... Another PSA. Don't let it get dusty.
And blokes, if you're listening, blow the dust off it. Come on.
Get in there with the feather duster.
If we get sued because men are feather dustering their women's badges, I'm going to get really mad at you.
Okay, listen. This has gone on far enough. What happens at the end of the movie Idle Hands?
Right, so Evil Hand causes a ruckus in the school dance.
This is this is the worst episode we've ever done.
I disagree.
I know I say that every episode.
This is the non-specific date special. It's allowed to get a bit messy.
Remember when this was a film podcast?
It is a film podcast. We just endorsed chowing down, okay? That's just what it is.
Season 2 is cancelled.
Right, I'm going to wrap up this movie because we have another movie to talk about.
Oh yeah, we do.
We do. So, at the end of the movie, the hand causes a ruckus at the school dance. It scalps the lead singer of The Offspring.
As you do.
Literally rips his scalp off, which is a wonderfully great effect. And so during the ensuing chaos, because it manages to also lock everybody inside the school dance, Molly and her friend Tanya escape into the vents where they are pursued by the hand. And in a really crazy scene, Molly stops the blades of a fan from an air conditioning unit, a giant air conditioning unit. She stops it with a high heel.
She certainly does.
This scene is wild.
Yes.
And it's really well directed as well, I think, because there's these really great slow zoom in shots and the blade clicking away as the heel is keeping it in place and stuff. And so they kick out the grate and using Tanya's whip. Is she supposed to be Catwoman? I don't know what she's supposed to be dressed as.
Wait, which one's Tanya?
She's the one that gets chopped up in the fan blades.
Isn't she the devil? Because Julie, what's her face? Molly's an angel.
Oh, an angel. Yeah, she's the devil. Yeah, it's just because she's got a whip and shit. And I was like,
but clearly this is a kinky... They're a kinky pair.
They're very kinky. Well, that's the thing, because Mick and Panab go to the dance as well. And Tanya is really into Panab. Even though he references the fact that he has got a severed head multiple times.
Oh, they like what they like.
She doesn't care. She just doesn't care.
What they like.
But eventually, Molly uses the whip cord thing to get down from the air conditioning unit. Tanya, however, is attacked by the hand and it throws the cord around her neck, hangs her from the air conditioning unit, and then turns the fans back on by removing the heel, and Tanya just gets obliterated.
She do. Rip.
And then from there, the hand manages to subdue Molly. Not entirely sure how it ties her to the hood of a car.
Just don't worry about it.
Yeah, we just don't need to worry about it. It's a devil-possessed hand.
Oh, and she ends up in her underwear because of course. It turns into some fucking Titane shit.
It goes weird.
She's writhing in her underwear on the hood of a car. It's fucking hell. Did Julia Dimmers step in to direct this one? Fucking hell.
So yeah, the finale of this movie is because the high school has an auto shop department, because apparently that's something that American schools have.
Yeah, that and shootings.
Mostly shootings, which we'll come back to, actually.
No, will we?
You'll see what I mean. That sounded very ominous.
Well, it's happening, listeners. We're doing a school shooting. You knew it
for
would
legal reasons. I have to say that we are not doing that.
Wait, hang on. Let's ask our good friend, the legal advice bear. Oh, you better say that you're not going to do it, baby. It's a different bear.
Since he's had to step in, we've been quite good recently.
It's a different bear to last time. The last one killed himself.
He shot himself. Yeah.
Yeah, straight in there.
He knew too much.
He saw too much, frankly.
We killed him.
We did murder him.
The legal advice bear's shaking his head at us now. Looks like he's going as well.
But the murder rabbit is violently masturbating in a high-backed armchair, so...
Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this movie. So, yeah, in the auto shop department, Molly is tied to the top of a car, and the hand, which is now inside a puppet, which is creepy as shit.
Yes.
And just pilots a puppet just for the fuck of it. It is raising the car up to basically crush Molly against the ceiling so it can then take her soul to the underworld. Anton comes in along with Mick and Panob, and they try and defeat the hand, and they can't because it's got such a strong grip on the controls. They then find a bong made from a carburetor, to which they smoke weed, or Anton smokes weed, and blows the smoke inside the puppet, causing the hand to get high and loosen its grip.
So weed saves the day.
Weed literally saves the day. Well, until after they rescue Molly, the hand leaps back and goes for Anton, and then Vivica Fox's character comes in and she throws her ceremonial dagger into the hand, and it then ends up in Mick's chest.
Yeah.
And in one of my favourite gags in the movie, the hand vibrates and then it just goes into a little puff of smoke. And Mick's like, oh, is that it? Like, so he's like, there's no hellfire, nothing. He's like, oh, I'm glad everyone's okay, but that was weak. That's probably my favourite line of the whole movie.
And then Anton gets crushed by the car, which suddenly falls.
Yeah, to which Panob's like, that should have come down much slower.
So, long story short,
Yeah.
Anton is not dead. Jasper Casper lives on. But he is in... he's all in bandages.
It's like a full body
He's
cast,
in
yeah.
traction. It seems him and Jessica Alba are now a thing.
Horny Molly.
Yes. And...
It's Horny Molly.
Horny Molly, sorry. And Mick and Panob do ascend to heaven, but then they come back as Jasper Casperson's guardian angels. Basically, because they need to make sure that he's renounced his evil ways, but it seems more like because they just want to dick around a bit more.
And it's a happy ending.
Yes. Until Jasper Casperson sees on the ceiling written in UV paint, I'm under your bed or whatever it says.
It's I'm under the bed. To which he starts freaking out, and then you cut to Mick and Panob walking down the corridor, going, should we tell him that we painted that on his ceiling? It's like, nah, we'll tell him later.
Badum tish indeed.
And then the movie ends, basically.
Yes, that's it. Movie over.
But I've loved this movie for a long time. I just think it's a lot of fun. It's very funny. It's got some really good gore gags in it. I think it's very inventive, considering it's it's doing the Tarantino thing of just cherry picking from several different areas and.
Yeah, this movie is just like a Tarantino.
No, it's
movie.
just as entertaining in my opinion.
I don't know about that.
I said it. I said what I said.
I don't know about that, my bro.
But no, this movie when it came out was a critical failure.
Yeah, it's got a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Which is fucking criminal. Like, this movie is not worthy of a 15%.
No, it should be 10% or lower. No,
How
no,
dare
I
you.
think 15% is a bit low. I mean, you got to remember that Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregate of vaguely positive and vaguely negative reviews, so it's not necessarily super reliable in that regard. I would kind of I don't know. I would expect this movie's Rotten Tomatoes score to be more like in the 40% region.
I think 50 to 60 personally.
I don't think. But I'm not talking about what I think about it. I'm talking about what I would estimate it would be a more accurate Rotten Tomatoes review score.
I just thought it'd be a bit more divisive, but I did a little bit more reading into it because this movie was a not only critical failure, it was a box office failure as well.
Okay.
So this movie was made for a budget of 25 million. And made 4.2 million.
What did they spend 25 million on in this?
I mean, a lot of the effect, because think about the digital effects with Panob's head and stuff like that. Like that was a lot of CG work.
True.
And this movie is pretty well shot as well. I would say there's some really good camera work.
Yeah. How much did you say it was? Sorry.
25 million.
Yeah, that's not loads in terms of Hollywood money, I suppose, but it still seems a lot for this movie.
For like a horror comedy indie movie, it's definitely.
The stars are not exactly huge. I mean, this is Jessica Alba before she was super famous.
Yeah, this is one of her first films. Yeah,
I would say the biggest star at this point is fucking Seth Green.
And obviously he was coming off the back of stuff like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like that.
And you can get Seth Green to be in a movie for £5 and a ham sandwich, you know what I mean?
Well, one of the main reasons why this movie didn't make money is because I don't know if I'm exact with this date. This movie was released in cinemas 10 days after Columbine.
Oh.
And it was very quickly pulled from cinemas as well, because it was very quickly kind of got around that this is a movie that involves a teenage character murdering his parents and his best friends, which seemed rather tasteless to release around this time. It was also mentioned by name by a senator at the time who, during the whole thing around, Columbine, they were blaming the movies and music and stuff like that. Idle Hands was actually name dropped.
Well, this movie that was released about a week after.
Yeah, because obviously during the whole sort of afterwards, where they were kind of like trying to blame things, they kept talking about like violent movies and violent video games, and Idle Hands, because it just come out, was mentioned in that.
Yeah, I just want to say about that. This is something that really gets my goat. They always try and find something to blame, yeah? Listen, I'll tell you who was to blame for fucking Columbine, right? Let me break it down for you. I'll tell you who was to blame. Dylan and fucking Eric.
Literally.
They shot a bunch of people. It was their fault. End of story. So anyway, Idle Hands, Kino or Inferno?
Well, before we get into the rating, I was going to say, like, what are your actual kind of thoughts on this, and like, would you recommend this as a 420 movie?
What, that date that has no particular significance to anyone ever?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, would you just suggest that people watch it on April 20th?
Yeah, insofar as anyone should watch anything on April 20th, because it's a day that has no particular relevance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought this movie was okay. I mean, like, our binary rating system of Kino or Inferno, I'd probably give it a soft Kino. It's not a movie that I could see myself returning to loads and loads of times, but if somebody, say, under the influence of a herbal tea, was like, shall we pop this movie on? I definitely wouldn't be adverse to it. It was entertaining enough. It was well made enough. It had some recognisable bits and bobs from other movies, but I thought it was pretty entertaining for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, because as I say, when you told me you hadn't seen it before, I was curious to know what you think of it. Like, because I've like I've said previously, I really, really do love this movie, and I've loved it for a long time, and I just think it's just every time I watch it, I always just have fun with it. And the one thing I was going to say about earlier was that I read an interview with Seth Green where he talks about the making of this movie, because it had its 20th anniversary recently, to which Scream Factory re-released it on Blu-ray, and because it's become quite a cult movie over the years, and deservedly so, in my opinion. But Seth Green said that when they were making it, there was definitely a clash of ideas between the director, the writers, and the cast.
Yeah, I think that is evident in the film somewhat. Like, I think there's moments here and there. I think the thing that stops it from being like an unqualified recommend from me is there are elements where, yeah, I can certainly see that the performances and the direction are not necessarily going hand in hand, but there's moments where punchlines don't quite land, and it's like, maybe it's slightly awkwardly delivered or slightly awkwardly edited around or whatever. Not so many that it becomes like a real issue, but like I would say, for example, like a moment that stood out for me of that kind of thing is the scene where he cuts off his hand, and then Seth Green's like, oh, we should go back to Panav's place, they've got antiseptic and all this kind of stuff. And then there's like a full 15-second pause before Panav goes, ooh, and burritos. And it's like, ooh, the timing's a bit off there. And there's a few moments of that, not so many that it ruins the movie, but like, there's a few moments where you're kind of like, I know these actors have comic timing because they're comic actors for the most part. And there's a few moments where it's a bit off. So I can definitely see that element of like, there's clashes between perhaps the directing and the performances.
Yeah, because from what Seth Green was saying, the three core actors, they saw it as being a little bit more serious when they sort of got the script.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so they tried to play it a little bit more seriously, and then we're told, no, like, we need to do a bit more broadly comedic. The writers were basically going for Heathers, in their own words. Like, they were going for Heathers.
Right, so kind of...
And you can kind of get that a little bit in it. It's kind of got that same sort of energy that Heathers has, I think. But obviously it's not like satirical in any way. And
yeah, Heathers is an
somehow Heathers I still think is darker than this movie.
Yeah, it's more realistic for a start, I guess. But Heathers is kind of...
Yeah.
It's an interesting touch point because I don't really see... Like, it wouldn't have come up in my mind. Because obviously the kind of things that I was thinking of were like I said, Evil Dead, Brain Dead, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I can certainly see that element of, like, the tone doesn't quite land right. I think for the most part, like, it doesn't matter, but yeah, there's definitely elements where, yeah, Heather's is an interesting reference point, I would say. Not entirely spot on, I don't think.
No, but I guess that was probably where the writer's original intention was. They wanted to do something a bit like Heather's. But then Seth Green also mentions that the director wanted to approach it like a giallo movie, or like a Dario Argento movie. He wanted to have like an Italian horror visual style, which does come across in certain parts. There's a lot of like weird lighting choices, and some of the sort of murder set pieces are done in like very sort of like Italian horror style.
Yeah,
way.
for sure.
And I feel like you can definitely see the melting pot of all three of those things coming together. And I think because the film's plot is so ridiculous and so outlandish, it kind of gets away with its tone going all over the place in parts, because it goes from being very quite a dark and serious to very slapstick to, you know, stoner comedy. Yeah, it is a little bit all over the place, but I think there's enough sort of like kinetic energy to the movie, and the performances are good enough that it never falls down too far. I think it always kind of picks itself up very quickly.
Yeah. Like, there's a few stumbles along the way, but it's not so bad that it like you said. There's a few kind of tonal missteps, I think, but they're not so bad that it throws the movie off.
No, it's just there's parts that definitely don't work as well as other parts, but I think the overall it carries itself quite well. Yeah, and and I can't really say I've seen many other movies like this, like truly like this, even though it's borrowing from a lot of other places. I've never seen a movie like this. Yeah,
it's definitely I mean, it's also like short enough that I would recommend that people watch it just on the basis of like it's something fun to watch, you know.
Yeah, it's a solid 90 minutes.
Yeah, which I've said this many times off air, but like I can never be too mad at a movie that's 90 minutes long, even if I hated it, because it's like, well, you know, you've only wasted an hour and a half of my time. Whereas like, you know, when you get into the over 2 hour mark, that's when I start to get a bit like, okay, you better be justifying this runtime more.
Yeah, exactly. I think this movie is. I think it's well paced as well. Like there's always something happening.
Yeah, there's no really boring sections.
No, and I think it ramps up significantly throughout the course of the film as well, because by the end it just gets crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, obviously I'm gonna say this is Kino because I really do love this movie. The only other thing I really have to say about it is there was a different ending shot, which they changed because the test audiences wanted more pot smoking and Jessica Alba to get a kit off. And
fair enough.
And that's how we got the ending that we did. And I like the ending in the movie, even though it's a bit odd with the bong made out of the carburetor and stuff. Because the original ending was that the hand... I saw the original ending on YouTube ages and ages ago. I should have watched it again before we did this episode. But it essentially turns the high school swimming pool in a portal to hell and is going to throw Jessica Alba into it.
Okay.
And there's a much more like elaborate and a much kind of like darker ending.
Yeah, I think the one with the car and that's better.
It's more suited to the film, I think.
I'm not just saying that because you get to see Jessica Alba's tight little buttons.
Yeah.
Although it helps, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. I think the ending that they went with fits the movie a lot better.
Yeah.
So that was Idle Hands. Kino. It's Kino.
Yeah, a soft Kino from me.
Soft Kino from you, hard Kino from me. It's a middle of the road Kino.
Hard, quivering Kino from Marg.
Hard Kino is going to be the spin-off where we talk about porn.
Oh. Have you seen Anal Schoolgirls 3?
And XX Xena.
I have seen XX Xena.
I am aware. I am aware you've seen that. So, Smiley Face?
Yes.
Every now and then, a film comes along that changes everything.
What were we talking about?
This is the story of how a person got from point A to point Z. Step 1, the cupcakes.
I recognized then the true nature of the cupcakes I had consumed.
So, our next film is 2007's stoner comedy epic odyssey, directed by Greg Araki, famous queer director. This movie's one of his least queer movies, but let me tell you something. It is a comedy starring Anna Faris as Jane F., no last name given, who is a stoner.
Yeah.
That's pretty much her entire character. I mean, we also learn that she is an out-of-work actor. Now, the movie follows a day in the life of Jane as she accidentally ingests... Well, she deliberately eats them, but isn't aware that they're full of pot. A bunch of cupcakes left by her roommate, and has to complete a series of increasingly difficult tasks in her completely blissed out state. Chief among them, acquiring more weed to replace the weed that she's just ingested from the cupcakes. Paying her dealer back, who she owes a significant amount of money to, so that he does not take her furniture.
Most notably her bed.
Yes. Attending an audition, which she bungles it to hilarious effect. And that's about it. I mean, the movie kind of follows her misadventures as she blissfully, stoners her way through these seemingly simple tasks. That's about it, right? We can get into the more detailed plot details.
Well, it's like I said off mic, I wouldn't really say Smiley Face necessarily has a plot, more as it's just a series of increasingly more bizarre and uncomfortable moments unfolding.
No, essentially the plot of this movie is an incredibly stoned woman tries to accomplish menial tasks.
Yeah, pretty much, and fails.
And fails.
It's a spectacular fact.
So, Mark, what is your relationship to this movie? Had you seen it before?
Yes, I had, actually. I've seen it a couple of times. I first saw it when I was in university. I think it was my first year of university. One of my housemates showed me it. Just because they were like, "Oh, you've never seen this? It's great." We watched it, and I thought it was great. Yeah, I really liked it. Watched it a couple of times since, and I always find it really funny. And what I've noticed about this movie as well, I think this is something me and you'll probably end up discussing, is that if you ask everybody what their favourite gags from this movie are, everybody has different. Everyone has different favourite parts of this movie. But I've always liked it because I like Anna Faris a lot. I've always thought she was a really good comedy actress.
This is a real showcase for her more so than anything.
Yeah, because you've also got a lot of other fairly well-known actors in this movie. A lot of fairly well-known comedy actors. A lot of people from The Office are in this movie.
John Krasinski most notably shows up.
Yeah, you've also got Adam Brody.
Yes.
You've got that woman from Glee whose name escapes me.
Jane Lynch.
That's the one. She shows up. There's a lot of John Cho.
You also have John Cho, Harold himself, if we're talking about 420 movies.
Yep.
I almost went with Harold and Kumar Get the Munchies, a.k.a. Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle for our American listeners.
Did you not think you'd go for Harold and Kumar Go to Guantanamo Bay?
I haven't actually seen that one.
Oh, really? See, I haven't seen the third one.
I've seen the other Harold and Kumar movies. I just want to take a side note to say, we'll get back to Smiley Face in a minute. Harold and Kumar Christmas or whatever the fuck.
Didn't see that
one. That one's fine. I will say the original, and I suspect Guantanamo Bay is also kind of just fine. But Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle / Get the Munchies. It was almost my choice for this because I kind of think it is the pinnacle of Stoner Road comedy to some extent. It is one of the dumbest movies ever made.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's very much in the spirit of Cheech and Chong, I suppose.
It's a more traditional stoner movie, yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to shout out that movie because I think it's great.
Yeah, I like that movie a lot as well.
To be honest, the scene where the two hot English girls are playing battle shits will never leave my brain. If ever I'm in I don't like to shit in public toilets, as you know, Mark, but if ever I am in that situation, I calm my poo nerves by thinking of battleships, to be honest.
That scene where they play battleships is just proof to me that no matter how old you get, fart jokes will always be funny.
Yeah.
They just will be.
So yeah, Harold and Kumar Get the Munchies, which for our American listeners, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle was called Get the Munchies over here because we don't have White Castle.
No, it's just not a thing over here. And also, I think Get the Munchies is a better title purely because it's more encapsulating of what the film's about.
I also love the scene where they go to the drive-thru of the other burger place, and the guy's talking about how good White Castle is. He starts going, just makes me want want to burn this motherfucker down. I'm going to burn this motherfucker down!
Played by Anthony Anderson, yeah.
Yeah.
The scene's great.
That's great.
That's the bit of that movie I always think of.
And obviously the running joke in all the movies of Neil Patrick Harris being a pussy hound coke addict is hilarious.
Apparently that movie is the reason his career had like a revival.
It is.
Yeah,
because in that movie, the joke in the first one anyway is they keep calling him Dougie Hauser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I remember reading that the reason why he got the job on How I Met Your Mother was because the producers saw him in that. And
which kind of makes sense. There's similar characters. I guess.
Absolutely. And obviously MPH has gone on to do so much more than How I Met Your Mother now. Thankfully.
Yeah, he did Harold and Kumar's Christmas.
Yes. Well, he's done his fair share of things.
Yeah, he was in a David Fincher movie. Give him his due.
Yeah, we like MPH.
Yeah, we do. He was also in The Matrix Resurrection.
I heard that, and I've heard that movie is poo.
I kind of liked it, but that's another story for another day.
Well, we can discuss that when I've eventually seen it, which will be after.
But you know how I feel about Big Lana Wachowski. She can do no wrong, and you know what? Come on the pod.
I like Bound, is all I'm saying.
Bound is a fucking excellent movie. Actually.
Bound is a great movie.
Underrated.
Very nearly my pick for a Series 2 episode, which is a shame because you guys will never hear it.
And obviously one day we'll discuss Speed Racer because we simply must.
Yeah, because you insist on us talking about Speed Racer. Anyway, we're talking about Smiley Face.
Yeah, sorry, we've gone around the houses there. So, Smiley Face. Yeah, so I've seen this movie a couple of times also. I will say the first time I saw this, I believe, was on a different 20th of April, when a friend completely randomly suggested we watch it. It should be stated that this film was released on the 20th of April 2007. Again, just complete coincidence. Obviously,
yeah, it's just a good day. Good day to release films.
This friend of the pod obviously wanted to celebrate the release of the film by putting the film on and sparking up a fat herbal tea. And I will say I was surprised by how good it was because I think it has the pedigree of Greg Araki as an incredible director anyway. Has worked through the indie scene of the 90s. You may know him from the film he made prior to this, Mysterious Skin.
I do know that movie. I did look him up before I watched this.
Which is not a stoner comedy, baby.
Yeah, I think there's one review I read of Smiley Face which said that he went too far in the other direction with this one after doing Mysterious Skin. Because I've seen Mysterious Skin, and that is a very good film, but it's a very uncomfortable film.
Yeah, it's an excellent film, but it's and it relaunched Joseph Gordon-Levitt's career.
Yeah, it's a great movie, but definitely not one for the faint-hearted, I guess.
JGL, what happened to him, man? You don't hear from him anymore.
He tried to make his own digital platform or something. He went off the rails.
He didn't.
He did some shit like that. I don't care.
Oh my! Is JGL into Bitcoin?
He might be.
Oh no!
No, it was some kind of I can't remember for the life of me. I remember he was involved in something that I remember hearing about and going, that sounds dumb, and it kind of never went anywhere.
That checks. I mean, because he directed that Don John movie.
Yeah, wasn't that one about him being addicted to wanking or something?
Yeah, and trying to shag Scarlett Johansson.
And she finds out that he's addicted to wanking. I never saw it.
Yeah, it's based on Don Juan DeMarco, but modern.
Yeah.
So there's that. Side note from the side note, Scarlett Johansson has a real thing about wanting to play brassy dames in movies. That Don John movie is not great, but she is good in it.
Oh, have you seen it? I haven't seen it.
I have seen it. Possibly one for a future episode, to be honest, because it's fascinating. Do you know what's fascinating about it? Is that it's the kind of thing where at the time he made it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a big star.
He was at the height of his powers, yeah.
Because he'd just come off doing 2 Nolan movies. And I know Mark likes to poo-poo Nolan, but let's face it, this was at the time when Nolan was at the height of his powers as well.
I'll only poo-poo the Nolan movie he was in that I've seen that is not very good.
Which is what?
Dark Knight Rises.
How dare you? Dark Knight Rises is excellent.
It's not. It's a crackhead movie, but that's for another time.
Yeah, that's what makes it good. Is that Christopher Nolan did a bunch of crack and was like...
that might be slander, but I'm fine with it.
Do you know what would be good? Is if there was an orphan boy who could psychically tell that Bruce Wayne was Batman. So the movie opens with Jane F. portrayed by Anna Faris. And she is taking control of a plane and crashing it with no survivors. No, that's not what's happening at all.
I'm just saying, mate, if Bane was played by Anna Faris, that movie would be certified Kino.
Yeah, because Anna Faris should be in every Batman movie as every Batman villain. Fact. I mean, we're a pro-Faris podcast, I think.
I feel like, she could have been fun as like Poison Ivy or Harley Quinn or something like that. She could have been fun.
I think she should be Batman, to be honest.
Yeah, fair, actually, I'll give you that. This movie starts with her being high and playing some kind of like Zoo Tycoon-esque game.
Yeah, with like shit tier graphics.
Yeah, like, I know this movie was low budget, but come on, guys, you could have at least got the rights to Zoo Tycoon.
Yeah, and so, as we said, she gets the munchies. And she decides to eat a bunch of cupcakes, which are labelled Jane Do Not Eat, by her housemate, who is played by no one in particular. That's all I'll say about that, gentleman. He was a no one in particular who was on that 70s show and has done some crimes, listeners.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
We will not be referencing him by name or treating him with any respect.
Fair enough.
He's certainly in this movie.
And that makes his character in this movie a little bit more disturbing than he already
Ooh,
is.
yes it does, baby. When I first saw this movie, I was like, tee-hee, there's that guy from that 70s show playing a weird creep. And now I'm like, there's that weird creep from that 70s show. Yeah, look it up. Or don't, actually, because it's quite upsetting. Just take my word for it.
I'm sickened but curious, to quote Johnny Bravo. But anyway, we'll move past it.
He's a bad man. He's bad news. Anyway, the point is this. She eats the cupcakes only to discover that they are marijuana edibles, which I'm told are very powerful, especially if you eat an entire plate. Cannot relate. Has never happened to me.
No, you only ate like 2.
Well, I mean, we won't get into it. We simply won't get into it because it's never happened to me.
No, yeah. You're a good Catholic boy and you would never ever touch the devil's lettuce.
All I'm saying is, eat half, see how you feel. Hypothetically speaking.
Better to have too little than too much.
Yes, because you can always eat the other half later.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Just you gotta be wary out there.
Like,
right?
if this is another PSA, eat pussy, don't overdo it on the edibles.
And watch yourself around the edibles.
Yeah.
I'm told it's a cleaner high. But the problem is, I'm told it's harder to control how much you're ingesting.
And apparently people just tend to eat these things on the 20th of April.
No, I don't think so.
No, really? I've heard that. I'm sure I read that somewhere.
Well, no more than any other day.
No.
Anyway.
So she eats the cupcakes.
She eats all these cupcakes, yeah. And she quit, and we get the hilarious close-up of her just, like, realising how baked she is. And then she has to kind of, like, force herself to make a list of things to do for the day. One of which is pay the gas bill.
Yep.
Which her housemate has left money for her to do. Obviously, she kind of realises she has to buy more weed to replace the cupcakes that she's just eaten. She has to go to her audition, which her agent has prepared for her. And I think that's it for now, but more tasks get added later on.
Yeah. So I do love the little part, because I think what I like about this movie so much is, compared to any other kind of stoner movie I've ever seen, I'd probably say the same about Idle Hands as well. I don't feel like it completely falls to cliches, and I think it's a more realistic and more grounded portrayal of people who are high.
Yeah, I think this is what makes this movie such a cult favourite for people who engage in that kind of thing. Is that it's definitely like Anna Faris definitely plays it to perfection. That thing of like being slightly too stoned to function, and having to function, and just not really understanding what's happening around you.
And the kind of insane sense of, like, not like only paranoia that you may get by being in public, or because there's loads of really great little bits. And I think my favourite part of this movie is there's a bit where she goes into the audition and she kind of like creeps her way in. and she thinks she's kind of being subtle, and she's like trying to compose herself, and a girl just leans in to say something to her, and it's done in the style almost like a jump scare.
Yeah, the music sting that's like, BAM!
Yeah.
Which I'm told is very relatable if you've ever been in that condition.
As far as I'm aware, like things like that can very much throw you through a loop when you are.
There's
under
also
the influence.
a nice detail in that scene where she closes the door and the slam from her perspective is incredibly loud. Which I'm told is something. Because there's also, before she goes to the audition, she gets in the car to try and drive and just immediately gets stressed out by just the concept of driving, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, and I think that's where this movie really succeeds in that sense, in that like it doesn't feel like it's sort of pandering to its audience. It's a very earnest kind of take on the idea. Obviously, it's still heightened because it's a movie.
It's very like stylistically directed as well. There's a lot of like flamboyant camera moves and kind of like text appears on screen and get like animated sections and stuff like that. Like the movie opens actually with her on the Ferris wheel, and we kind of get to how she got there. And she's like talking to the narrator, which is her own thoughts, which is like the first gag of the movie is when the narrator goes, where she goes, "How do you know what I'm thinking?" And the narrator just goes, "Because I'm you fucking pothead." And then we go back to how she got there, which is kind of the main thrust of the story. I will say as well, I think there's some interesting kind of parodies of the cliches of it's kind of drug movies, I guess. Like when the dealer shows up and says like, "Oh, don't," and she says like, "Oh, can I, pay you back later," sort of thing. He's like, "This is the last time, and like, if you fuck me about this time, I'm gonna send the boys around," kind of thing. And she's like, "What, to kill me?" And he's like, "No." And she goes, "Oh, to break my arms." And he's like, "Break your arms? What the fuck are you talking about? No, just like take your furniture and stuff." Which I thought was hilarious, because in movies, drug dealers always go straight to like, "I'll fucking kill you if you don't pay me back."
They're not interested in getting their money back. They're interested in killing you, which just seems counterproductive in my eyes.
And we later find out that the only thing that she's got that's worth any money is the most comfortable bed in the world, quote unquote, which she bought for a couple of $1,000s when she was blazed one time.
And I love all the little cutaways. Whenever she's like, "No, I don't want to lose my bed." It's just these cutaways of Anna Faris just writhing around in pure ecstasy on her mattress.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So yeah, she tries to go to her audition to begin with, where she can't drive. She tries to get on the bus, and that also turns out to be a bust.
Which is, honestly, that scene is stressful.
It is genuinely, like, they convey the paranoia so well in that scene. Because obviously she breaks a toy car that a kid has, and a guy starts berating her, and then this woman starts going, "I think she's on drugs," that she hasn't paid the driver, that she doesn't have any change, and she has to just peg it from the bus.
I watched this with my housemate, and after that scene ended, he sort of turned to me and was just like, "That seems like my worst ever nightmare," like being in that scenario.
Yeah. I mean, I'm told from a friend of a friend of a friend that getting the bus is intensely stressful when one is in a certain level of chemical alteration.
I mean, understandable, really.
I mean, in fact, I have a good friend who tells me that there's a certain level of chemical alteration you get to where, like, money just kind of stops making sense. And paying for goods and services becomes a task.
It just always reminds me of that part in American Dad where Stan is just really high staring at the Cheetos.
Yeah. Cheetah. Cheetos.
Why is there a leopard on the Cheetos bag?
Yeah, so just to kind of breeze through the plot of this movie, because this movie is pretty easy breezy, and it is just kind of... It's just an excuse to put Anna Faris into various comical situations. We go to the audition, long story short, and she completely kind of... Because I should have written down the line of dialogue that she has to say. But she's like trying to rehearse it in her head before she gets there. And then when she gets to the audition with Jane Lynch, she just starts yelling it really enthusiastically. And then
it's sort of like, "Come on, Frank, I always thrive under pressure," or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then when she's delivering it, she's like, "Come on, Frank, you know I love surprises." Or
that's it. You know I love surprises.
I love surprises. And then Jane Lynch is like, take it back a little bit. And she goes, come on, Frank, It's a great little scene, which culminates in her trying to sell the quote-unquote government weed, which we should say, she tries to remake the edibles, gets a call from her boyfriend, ends up throwing the phone into the pan and destroying the weed that she just got on tick from her dealer. It transpires that she has some quote-unquote government weed, which is what she calls it.
Her special weed.
Stashed away for a special occasion, which she then reasons that she will sell at the hemp festival that she knows that her dealer is at. However, it falls out of her pocket at the audition and she tries to sell it to one of the other actresses at one point, which doesn't go well. Then she tries to sell it to Jane Lynch, who it turns out is a big fan of the LAPD, and immediately starts to call the cops. So Jane F has to flush the weed in a scene which is fucking incredible, where she locks herself in the toilet.
I'm glad you mentioned that bit because it's one of my favourite parts of the movie.
Yeah, where she's
it's so
trying
funny.
to flush the weed before the cleaner realises what she's up to. The cleaner's like rattling the handle of the cubicle, and she just goes, "I'm having a shit. I'm having a big old shit." It's great. So she flushes that weed, and that's a problem because now she has no weed to sell. Let me just get up my notes because I wrote down this sequence of events just so that we could keep it under control. So she calls pretty much everyone she has in her address book, most of whom are people she has very tangential relationships with, including a clarinet teacher who taught her for less than a month before she get. And we're introduced to how she knows all these people because a photo comes up on screen, and then it comes up with a small paragraph about like Jane knows this person from X, Y, and Z.
And it's also a gag that I love. The clarinet teacher gag is great as well because when you get the explanation of that, it explains that Jane had some serious problems with depression and acute anxiety and thought taking up clarinet lessons would be a good way to get over that, but quit after a month because it was really hard.
Yeah. And she ends up calling John Krasinski's character Brevin, who is her roommate's friend who is secretly in love with her and is something of a weirdo himself, right?
Yeah, because we see the montage depicting how he fell in love with Jane, and he's just kind of always staring at her when she's really high and asleep on the sofa or like eating. It's very weird.
It's very weird. And we also get a little scene of him wanking in the shower where his fantasy is he's playing, is it Battleship?
Can I say a little scene? That scene goes on for at least a minute and a half to 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Of John
It's
Krasinski just jacking it.
Just jacking it. Oh no, he's not playing Battleship, it's like air hockey. They're playing air hockey in bed, but Jane is naked and he is fully clothed because we get a little thought bubble which goes into his fantasy. And I just love the detail that even in Brevin's wildest sexual fantasies, he's not getting laid. He's just playing air hockey with a naked Jane. I mean, it's incredible. So he turns up to help her out, give her a lift to I think it starts off with him giving her a lift to the hemp festival, but then she tries to get the money out of him, exploit his love for her to get this $500 she needs, which leads to a great bit where he goes, "You're going to pay me back, right?" And, the audience laughs because obviously she's not. So they end up going to, because he's got a dental appointment, and they end up going to the dentist. She has to wait in the waiting room and gets intensely stressed out.
I mean, as you would. Like, that's not the place you want to be under the influence. I imagine.
But we also find out a key detail is that Brevin leaves his wallet on the dashboard of his car because it makes his ass uncomfortable. This leads to his car being broken into whilst they're in the dentist's.
Yep.
And the wallet being stolen. Which then leads to Brevin calling the cops and a fucking incredible scene where Jane is trying not to make eye contact with the cops, is standing like 2 meters away from Brevin and the cop, insisting that he call her by another name and then not answering to it. She tells the cop that her name's Christy, and there's a fucking great scene where the cop is obviously onto her and is like, "Am I going to find the drugs that you're on in the boot of this car?" Opens the boot and then he starts going, "Christy," and then Brevin starts going, "Christy," Christy! And Jane's just staring off at the middle distance. He just goes, oh, Jesus Christ, Jane! Which is hilarious. I mean, John Krasinski's great in this movie. I guess this is before The Office, maybe? Or like just before?
Around that time, Bobby, because The Office went on for like 1 billion years, didn't it?
Yeah, I guess it must have started in the sort of mid to late 2000s.
I'm going to be very typical us and do research on the show itself.
Well, because the British Office was on sort of 2000, 2001.
Yeah. So it was 2005, so The Office was already out.
Oh, wow. So they'd done, what, 2 seasons?
Yeah, but it didn't really take off for a while, did it? Or at least from what I gather.
No, because actually the first 2 seasons of The Office are kind of a remake of the British Office, and then it kind of goes off and becomes its own thing. Because in Britain we only give comedy series 2 seasons, then we kill them. We kill them dead.
That's all you get, unless you're last of the summer wine,
which will never stop.
No, because it's a dementia ward.
Even though it's been off the air for about a decade, but
it'll come back. There's a whole other generation of comedy actors that need,
Oh no, they're still making
out
it.
To pasture.
They're still making it. They're just not showing it anymore. They're still going down the hill in that bath. Peter Sallis has gone on to the hill, the bath going down a hill in the sky.
Mate, his bath going down the hill took him to the heaviside layer. That's what happened.
It's like the Valhalla of British comedy actors. They ride along the Tim Baths of the great Sid James is there in another Tim Bath with Kenneth Williams.
That was a very niche joke.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Yes, so Jane ends up bailing and goes to the house that they passed on the way of her former communist teacher.
Yeah, this is where the movie gets a bit strange, and this is already a strange movie.
Yes, because we do find out that Jane majored in economics, which leads to a great little line earlier on where her drug dealer says, "I thought you were an actress," and she goes, "Yeah, well, economics didn't work out for me," which I think is a nice little gag. But
yeah, that's great. I like that.
Yes, but we found out that she was introduced to the concept of Marxism by this professor, and she still knows where his house is, which is interesting. But she goes there, and his wife is there, and assumes that she is there to pick up an original copy of the Communist Manifesto.
I don't think it's his wife, it's his mother, isn't it?
Oh, maybe. I might have spaced on that detail. But regardless, an older woman is there. Jane exploits her for food and food and orange juice, sorry. And then also just... because she's just kind of rolling with the flow because she thinks the cops are onto her. So she's just kind of going with what this woman says. The woman thrusts an original copy of the Communist Manifesto into her hands, and Jane decides to take it and attempts to sell it online, but it doesn't really go according to plan. Which leads to her randomly in a laundromat asking a random person what they would do if they've had a very rare and valuable book on them, which then leads to him hating her and calling the cops. So now we have a party of people pursuing Jane through the rest of the movie. Led by Brevin and the cop who she was pretending to be Christy to.
It's basically a Benny Hill skit.
Yes. And I think we can kind of sum up the rest of the movie with further misadventures. I mean, she encounters John Cho and Danny Trejo because she decides to get to Venice Beach where the hemp festival is and sees the word Venice, California written on the side of a meat truck, and so decides to get into that meat truck as one would, assuming that it will terminate in Venice, California. Unfortunately for her, it does not. And she ends up at a meat factory, tries to blag that she's from the Union, which leads to the great scene where we see her giving a rousing Marxist speech, and then the movie cuts to what really happened, which is her just going, well, you're like, whoa, and I'm like, this is bullshit,
whole situation
man.
Is fucked.
Yeah.
Anna Faris, like, she gives her all in this movie.
Yeah, both versions of that speech are excellent performances from Anna Faris. Like, when she's giving the rousing sort of like Marxist speech is hilarious, and then when it cuts to the real like monologue of her just rambling, is fucking incredible as well. And like, if there's anything to take away from this movie, like, I don't think you need to be a stoner to, because obviously neither of us have ever touched.
Well, absolutely not. Why would we?
A single iota.
It's abhorrent behaviour. You should be stoned to death.
Yeah, really. It's steady on. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, what I was saying is, yeah, I think Anna Faris's performance is so funny, and the fact that she is playing someone who is, like, completely blitzed for the entire movie, and it doesn't really get annoying, and
No.
you still kind of sympathise with her, like, even though she's a complete wreckhead, you kind of want her to get through the movie okay.
I think it's because ultimately, like, she doesn't mean any harm. Like,
No.
she ate those cupcakes, and she shouldn't have eaten those cupcakes. That's the thing. Like, that is the catalyst for all the events. She should not have eaten those cupcakes. But she was high and saw cupcakes, and clearly had no self-control.
Yes.
And we've all had moments where we've lacked self-control.
We never have. We never have.
Well, speak for yourself.
I've never lacked self-control. I've always been in total control of my actions.
I have killed.
Yeah, I've killed, but I chose to. It was a choice. Anyway, look, the long and short of it is she goes to the... she ends up hitching a ride with John Cho, who has a very creepy sexual fantasy about her in the car.
Yeah, that scene is a lot.
Long story short, she ends up at the hemp festival, but it's closed. She looks for her drug dealer Dave. He is not there. The party that are pursuing her turn up. She hides out on the Ferris wheel while she tries to think of a way to escape. She ends up, for no apparent reason, and the narrator even says that long after this day, people would ponder what convoluted logic led to her making this decision. She tears up the Communist Manifesto and throws the papers around everywhere, which does lead to a nice little montage where we get to see all the characters that she's passed through on this movie as the pages of the Communist Manifesto blow past them.
And I feel like there's some kind of message in there, but my god, I do not know what it's saying.
I don't think there's a message, really. I think it's just having a bit of fun. Anyway, the long and short of it is she gets arrested, and she ends up doing community service for a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
it's
I have to
clearly
say,
still
I like
getting
that as
it's
an
still
ending.
clearly getting blazed during her community service.
Yeah, I do like the fact that there is ultimately consequences to her actions at the end. Like, you know, she fucked up, but she pays it back. And I like that about her character. I like that she's not a genuinely malicious person. She just made a very silly mistake, which, you know, she did her best to get out of because she didn't want her roommate to kill her because she believes that he has sex with skulls, and that's actually something we later find out is true.
The dealer puts that thought in her mind, right, as a motivating factor early on. He kind of goes, "Oh, what's the deal with your roommate? It seems like a skull fucker to me." We later find out that is the case, and he does fuck skulls.
Yeah, he does. When he comes back to the apartment and finds that Dave has taken all the furniture.
Because when the pages of the Communist Manifesto blow past Dave and his crew, they are taking an itinerary and removing furniture from the apartment.
Including the bed.
Including the most comfortable bed in the world. So, we're running kind of long on this episode, so Mark, what do you reckon to this movie? Are we saying Kino or are we saying Inferno?
It's Kino again. I like this one a lot. I've watched it a couple of times over the years, and I've always found it really funny and really charming. There's one scene in it that always comes back to me, and I always think about is the little monologue that Anna Faris gets about lasagna and Garfield.
Yes,
I think that might be my favourite part of the film.
In fact, drop some audio in of that monologue now.
And here it is now.
That is where corn chips come from. Maybe old Professor Harwood is onto something. He probably really loves corn. And all corn-related products. I mean, isn't that what you're supposed to put in a frame? Things you love? I'm gonna do that. When I get home, I'm gonna frame a bunch of stuff I love. Like lasagna. I love lasagna. It's so good. And cheesy. You know who else loves lasagna? Garfield. Man, that cat really loves lasagna. Maybe I should put a picture of Garfield in a frame. You know, as a kind of shorthand way of saying, I love lasagna. That would be so fucking inside. Or how about a photo of President Garfield? Oh shit, that'd be totally meta. People would be all like, Jane, why do you have a photo of President Garfield on your mantle? And I'd be like, because I like lasagna, of course.
That was just sublime. Sublime.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
I'd have to agree with you. I think this is definitely a pretty hard Kino for me. I think it might be one of the best, if not the best, stoner comedies ever made. I think because it kind of like it has that absurdity to it, and I'm reliably informed from friends of friends that if you're chemically altered while watching this, it becomes the funniest movie ever made. But watching it stone cold sober with my partner last night, we were both laughing at it quite a bit. And yeah, I have to say, I think it's made very... I mean, Greg Araki's a great director, so I think that definitely helps. It's that thing... It's kind of the Edgar Wright effect where, like, it's someone who is a proper director making a comedy makes so much of a difference, you know? And by proper director, I mean someone who's not just, like, going, well, fuck it, we'll just set a camera up and let the actors riff. Like, someone who is adding to the comedy through the visuals, through the choice of angles. I mean, you get so many great close-ups of Anna Faris just, like, staring off into the middle distance. Like, one of my favourite bits in this movie is so early on, but it's where she realises that she's just eaten a load of marijuana edibles, and she's like, oh shit, I've got to make a list, I've got to make a plan. And you just see her, like, staring off into the distance. Then a caption comes up saying, 20 minutes later, and she's staring off at the same position, and then she just slowly turns to camera with this, like, dopey, stoned smile. And I just think it's so funny, and it's so full of little details like that. That just make it so, you know, it's an enjoyable rewatch.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of plot, but it has a lot of gags, so...
No, and I think, like, you know, most stoner movies don't necessarily need that, because I think Idle Hands is definitely a little bit heavier on story than what this one is.
Yeah.
Because you've got the whole, like, Judaic priest stuff, and the whole fact that these murders have happened again and again and stuff, whereas, yeah, I think both movies are very enjoyable romps in their own way. Yeah, because
I think what this movie does, rather than having, like, A to B plot, is kind of like, it sets up she's going to end up on this Ferris wheel, and then it just kind of goes, here's, like, it says early doors, like, these are the scenes we're going to have, because she needs to go here, here, and here. And what the movie is really about is less the progression of plot and more like, how can she make the situation awkward, or how can she fuck it up? And, like, I think in that level, every scene in this movie kind of becomes its own little comic masterpiece. Like, just little things like the bus scene, or like the audition scene, or like the scene where she's, like, considering driving to the audition. These sound like such mundane one-sentence scenes, but they layer so many jokes into every scene that it just becomes like, it doesn't, like, this is essentially a one-joke movie, which is woman is too stoned to function. But the angles they find for that joke throughout the movie, and the ways they employ that character, it never gets old throughout its runtime. Like, I would agree. If anything, it gets funnier as it goes along.
I think you can definitely see a really good, like, partnership between Anna Faris and Greg Araki as well. I think they completely understand how to make that character funny, and I think, like, the way, like, the choice of shots and the choice of editing and stuff, like, really complements her performance and vice versa. Especially, like, that gag I mentioned a lot earlier where she sits down in the audition room and the woman starts to talk to her. It's literally done like a horror movie jump scare. But it's just so funny, because it just comes so out of nowhere, and, like, it's the perfect punctuation of that, like, sting of music with Anna Faris's sort of gaunt expression, like a deer in the headlights, staring at this woman. It's just great. I love it.
I think this movie also is, like, what it has over a lot of stoner comedies. Even stuff like Cheech and Chong. Like, I know those guys were big into their weed, and, like, obviously Tommy Chong got arrested for possession and so forth, so, like, these guys, that, like, it is serious to them. But, like, I think what it has over those movies is it's grounded in realism to an extent, although it has that heightened sense to it. But the heightened sense comes from being in Jane's perspective throughout the entire movie. So, like, it's almost like you're mainlining her stoned thoughts throughout the movie.
Yeah, because, like, the series of events that transpires are, for the most part, fairly ordinary. I mean, it goes into some odd places, like when, you know, she goes to the meat factory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it is just, she goes to get in her car, she can't drive. She goes to get on a bus, people there are judging her. Like, it's, you know, she sits at a dentist waiting office and she's bored because she's stoned off face. Like, it's all very kind of mundane activities, but through that lens of her being absolutely, chonged off her fucking face.
Tommy chonged. Yeah. He was also on that 70s show. Random detail. Anyway, yeah, I really like this movie. I think it is very easy breezy, and I think that's kind of part of its appeal as a quote-unquote stoner movie as well. Is like, it's just a comedy. There's not really anything going on beneath the surface, I don't think. Which I would guess is probably why Greg Araki felt the need to make this movie, especially after a film like Mysterious Skin, which is dark.
Yeah,
and like, I think what this movie really is, it is a love letter to Anna Faris as a comic actress. She's obviously been in a lot of other stuff. Like, obviously she's been the lead in a few comedies here and there, like The House Bunny she's in, for example.
Scary Movie is obviously the main sort of franchise that she's associated with, which, you can debate the quality of those movies to the ends of the earth, but she is consistently very funny in those movies.
Yeah. You don't see her in a lot of stuff these days, actually, which is unfortunate, because I think
I do want to shout out the fact that she is a good serious actress as well, because she was in Brokeback Mountain, for example.
Yeah.
She's also in a film that I really, really love, May. If you've ever seen May.
Yeah, I've seen May. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's not in that a lot, but she's good in that, and she's kind of playing like a straight role in that, and she's good in that.
Yeah, that's a very Mark Smith film. I mean, I like that.
Dates back to my teenage Grebo years. That one.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I like that film a lot as well, to be fair. But that's another. We might cover it at some point. What was I saying? Yeah. So, yeah, it's a shame you don't see Faris in much stuff these days. I mean, the last thing I saw her in was that movie Keanu with Key and Peele.
I haven't seen that. I didn't know she was in that.
Yeah, she has a cameo as herself, kind of doing the Neil Patrick Harris bit in Harold and Kumar, actually, where she's like playing psychotic Anna Faris. And she's great in that one scene, but like that's it. It's like a cameo, really. That movie is it's an interesting one. Given that Key and Peele are so great as sketch comedians, I think that movie could have been a lot better, but it's also, fairly entertaining for what it is. We're not talking about Keanu, though. Yeah, and I think the two-pronged thing with Smiley Face is a massive love letter to Anna Faris. Like, the only reason this movie exists, presumably, is because he had her in mind for the role. I mean, no one else could play this character to the same extent.
No, she's so perfect for this film, and she is just such a great comedy actress. Like, she's just naturally funny.
I think it's hard to make stoner characters sympathetic to the non-stoner audience, or funny to the non-stoner audience. Whereas I think this movie, Anna Faris really knows how to thread that needle of, like, she's playing up the stoner elements, but it's funny to them. Like I say, my partner, who genuinely has never touched a drop in her life, she found this movie hilarious. And I think part of that is because it's recognised, you can recognise the behaviours of real life stoners in this performance, which I think is the other prong of the two-pronged fork here, is this movie is kind of a love letter to the stoner in general. Like, and I think that's what it has over other stoner comedies, is that there's no element, and actually I would kind of say this is true of Idle Hands as well, there's no element of condemnation from the film. They're not really looking down on the stoner lifestyle.
There's no demonization of it.
Yeah. They're just, I mean, they do point out in this movie doesn't shy away from the fact that Jane is, she does kind of use people. She's a bit of a bum. She does kind of, mooch off people. But also, it goes out of its way to be like, yeah, but the people who would let this obvious degenerate mooch off them are not all there themselves. Like, Brevin is pretty obviously not all there. Her roommate is also not all there. He's a fucking skullfucker. And, it kind of, even though she's been mooching off this drug dealer, this guy is perfectly willing to steal all of her furniture. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This movie does not judge her for her choices, I don't think.
No, and I think, both this movie and Idle Hands, like, the whole fact that the characters smoke weed is just purely a catalyst for the events to transpire, because of the reason why Anton ends up becoming possessed by the devil is because he just sits around getting stoned all the time, and therefore the devil possesses his hand. And in Smiley Face's case, Jane ends up eating them cupcakes because she's just stoned. Like, it's just, I don't think it demonizes people's decision to smoke weed. It just kind of goes, well, crazy shit can happen, I guess, or like, bad things can happen.
And I think in the case of Smiley Face especially, this is a screenplay written by somebody who's had this day. You know, this is a screenplay that's definitely written by somebody who's gotten a little too high at 9 o'clock in the morning and then had to go about their business. Because
I think it's definitely speaking to the stoner experience.
Oh yeah, it smacks of authenticity, which is why I think it gets away with some of the more absurd elements.
Yeah, so that was Smiley Face and Idle Hands, both Kino.
I hope you're enjoying this day, which is not relevant for any particular reason. If you are blazing it, then, you know, blaze it responsibly.
Yep, and make sure you eat puss.
Make sure you eat puss, for heaven's sake. Anyway, listen, the next episode is going to be on the Bateman franchise. Well, it's going to be the Tim Burton Bateman films and the Joel Schumacher Bateman films. We may discuss the Bateman, just because I don't think we're going to discuss it any other.
We briefly talked about this one. We might be able to skip that one.
No, we can get into it
we
in
can
a
get
bit
into
more depth,
it,
I think. I'm ready to talk about the Bateman.
Okay.
I needed some time to gestate and for the internet to stop saying silly things like it's the most comic accurate Batman, which doesn't mean a goddamn thing.
No.
We'll get into it.
Yes, we will.
Because if you want, all I'll say now is if you want to talk about comic book accurate Bateman films, go and watch the Adam West Bateman series and then read a Bateman comic from the 60s and then talk about comic accurate. Because they literally just translated that shit to the screen. But somehow I don't think that's what the people who say the Bateman is the best one are really getting at. But
I don't know. I feel like the new Bateman is the best film ever to those that wank off over A24 movies. But we'll get into that.
Hey,
we'll get into that.
I wank off to A24 movies.
I wank off to some A24 movies.
I mean, look, I should say I do like the Bateman, more or less. I just think people need to fucking chill out about that movie, man. Like,
yeah, no,
some
I
of the
agree,
opinions, some of the opinions I've seen are incredibly over the top.
I feel the same way about No Way Home in that respect, but we can obviously get into this another time.
Yes, probably next episode.
Yes.
So next episode we'll talk about the Burton Batemans, we'll talk about the Schumacher Batemans, we'll touch on the current Bateman.
But in the meantime,
Robert Bateman.
Robert Bateman. But in the meantime, you can find us over on Facebook at Kino Inferno. You can find us on Twitter at Kino_Inferno. You can obviously find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, not Stitcher. Don't know what it is. No idea.
You can find us on the streets.
You can find us on the streets.
Sheets.
Eating puss.
Yeah, anyway, look, I've been Aiden.
And I've been Mark.
And I've been Seth Rogen. Blaze it, fucker!
Right, okay, that was good. Let's go get high.
Whoa, one question at a time. Yes, you?
Look, I'm really starting to worry. There's half-eaten cupcakes everywhere, we're all out of paper clips, and the curtains smell like doob.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got news for you. I just got promoted, and it's all thanks to Yes I Cannabis. We have a kitchen?